What if I were to tell you that one man could save a franchise? Now, we've all heard that before, where a star player is drafted to a failing team who turns it around to be better. But I'm talking about saving a franchise. Not just from a competitive standpoint, but a player who transcended the game to the point where the team, fans, and even the city is made better because of you. A player who took a franchise who was on the brink of folding because of financial issues in 1998 and turning them into a team worth an estimated $650 million in 2018, just 20 years later. The player that did this, and so much more for the city of Pittsburgh, and the topic of our podcast today is none other than Super Mario Lemieux. Welcome to Walking with Legends, the podcast dedicated to telling the stories behind the most iconic athletes and teams in sports history and what made them become a legend. When you think of the greatest players in any sport, there's often going to be a great deal of debate. People from past generations will usually concede that their generational players were the best, whereas the modern generation will usually concede that their players are better. However, I don't think that it's a stretch to agree that Mario Lemieux, similar to other hockey greats such as Wayne Gretzky, Gordie Howe, Steve Yzerman, and many others, are all among the greatest to ever play in the NHL. What sets Lemieux apart from many of these individuals, however, is how he went about making his impact on the game, not only on the ice, but in the owner's box. Mario Lemieux was born in 1965 in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, as the youngest of three sons. He first began skating when he was very young, and his father realized his potential ability to be a professional when he was only 6 years old. Lemieux had a significant physical advantage on his hockey peers, as he would eventually grow to be 6'4" and 220 pounds, well above the average weight and height for the 1980s. But he also had the ability to skate quickly and smoothly for his size. Lemieux would eventually begin his professional hockey career by joining the Laval Voisins of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, or the QMJHL, at the age of 15 years old, where he would go on to post records that had never been seen before. In the 1983-84 season for the Voisins, Lemieux scored 282 points, earning him the top junior player in Canada honors, and would serve as a precursor for what he would soon do to the NHL. The Pittsburgh Penguins franchise had been around since 1967. However, as is the case with most expansion teams that join a professional league, the team struggled to compete at first. In the 1970s, the team was able to manage a few seasons over 500. However, they all ultimately ended in disappointment with no real chance at hanging with the rest of the league. In the 1983-84 season, the Penguins finished with the season with the worst record in the league, narrowly beating the New Jersey Devils by 3 points for the honor, and helping them secure the first pick in the 1984 NHL draft. There was some controversy throughout that season that the Penguins were tanking in order to secure the first pick, as they went on multiple losing streaks of 5 or more games during the last 20 games of the season. But it ultimately gave them the position to draft Mario Lemieux as their new burgeoning superstar. Lemieux was rewarded with the biggest rookie contract that had been given up to that point, worth $600,000 over 2 years. It would be fair to assume that a player with so high of expectations and notoriety going into their first year in a professional sports league would be charismatic, cocky, or a showman on or off the field of play. But Lemieux was the opposite. He was often very shy when he was not on the ice, and he hated giving interviews. He spoke French naturally, so he had to learn to adjust to the English language and to living in the city of Pittsburgh. The Penguins had a difficult time getting fans to show up for their games, as they were averaging around 7,000 fans a game, which was less than half of the stadium's capacity, and as a result were in the midst of a financial crisis. The team had previously declared bankruptcy in the 1974-75 season, and were hoping that by drafting Lemieux, it would be the turnaround that they desperately needed. In the 1984-85 debut season, Mario Lemieux continued his success on the ice, racking up 100 points and winning the Calder Cup for the Rookie of the Year. He ended up scoring a goal on his first shot that he ever took on his very first shift that he ever had in the league, which happened against the Boston Bruins. He also was the first player ever to win the NHL All-Star Game MVP as a rookie. Although he found success out of the gate, the team did not, and again finished last in the standings. The next year, Lemieux put up 141 points, which was good enough for the second most in the league behind only Wayne Gretzky, and earned the Lester B. Pearson Award for the best regular season player as voted by his peers, an award he would win a total of 4 times in his career. This trend of success would continue for Lemieux as he went on to dethrone Gretzky eventually as the league's point leader in the 1987-88 season, scoring 168 points and winning his first Hart Memorial Trophy for MVP of the league. The breakthrough of Lemieux's career would actually come in the 1990-91 season. The Penguins had again finished near the bottom of the league in the standings in the previous year and had used their draft pick to acquire another hockey legend that would elevate Lemieux to his next level, Jaromir Jagr. Lemieux took Jagr under his wing, and despite missing the first 50 games of the season with an injured back, he was able to become a Stanley Cup champion for the first time in his career, earning the Finals MVP to boot. The following season, Lemieux would continue his legacy by helping the team win their second championship in team history in back-to-back years. Although Lemieux experienced a great deal of success throughout his career, he also was the recipient of a lot of issues with injuries. Throughout his career, Lemieux dealt with herniated discs and back issues, shoulder and hip injuries, but ultimately had to retire multiple times due to some more life-threatening diseases. In 1993, Lemieux was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, a cancer of the lymph nodes that forced him to miss over a season of his best hockey and was ultimately the cause of his first retirement in 1997. He would make a comeback and play again beginning in 2000, but was forced to retire again in 2006 due to atrial fibrillation, or an irregular heartbeat disease. At certain times in his career, his back would be hurting him so badly that it was reported that he couldn't even bend over to tie his own skates, and had to have assistance to do so. Yet, despite these trials and the pain that ensued, he continued to push towards greatness and was able to find success when there didn't seem like there was any to find. When asked why he thought Mario Lemieux came out of retirement in 2000 to play again, his teammate Jaromir Jagr, he told this story which he posted on his Facebook account, and he said, quote, "The story begins 5 years earlier. It's March 24th, 1996. A son was born on this day, but not everything was the way that every parent wishes. Austin was born a couple months early. No one knew what would happen, so Mario spent 3 days in the hospital with his wife and son. After 3 days of stress without sleep, Mr. 66 got the great news. The son will live and be healthy. Mario got so excited that he decided to play a game that same day. We played against St. Louis and won. I don't remember the exact score, but I know that Mario scored 5 goals and assisted on 2 more. No, that's not a typo. He scored 5 goals and 2 assists. Trust me, I was there. If you don't, just check YouTube." Life went on, and Mario retired a year later. It was March 1997, and Mario scored a goal against Philadelphia with 2 minutes left, and most fans consider this the last goal of his career. Then, for 3 years, he devoted his time to his family and golf, but also his club, the Penguins, where he was the owner. He didn't miss a single game. Sometimes he visited practices too, and with him his, at the time, 4-year-old son Austin. He loved hockey too and didn't do anything without a hockey stick in his hands. One day he wandered into the staff room and started talking to the person sharpening our skates. Austin said, "Hi, Steve, what's going on?" Steve said, "Hi, I'm sharpening the skates for our players. We have a game today." Austin says, "I know, I'll be there." "And who's the player on the poster?" he says, pointing to a poster of Mario Lemieux. "That's your father," said Steve. "My father played hockey?" Austin says. Steve looked at Austin in disbelief and said, "Your father was the best player in the world for a long time." "Oh, I didn't know," said Austin, and he left and continued to play with his ball. Now, I know for a fact that Mario found out about this conversation between Steve and Austin, and a month later, he announced that he was going to come back. The first 2 games were against Toronto and Ottawa. We won both of them, and do you know what Mario's total was? 2 games, 2 goals, and 5 assists. After 3.5 years of leisure. Unbelievable. This story about little Austin is, in my opinion, the main reason why Mario returned to the ice. Austin finally saw his father play, and Mario proved once again that he is the best player of all times. End quote. At the end of his career, Lemieux would have made his mark on NHL history. With 2 championships, 6 scoring titles, 3 league MVPs, 10 All-Star appearances, and many more awards, it was a no-brainer that he would be voted into the Hockey Hall of Fame well before he was even done playing. At his first retirement in 1997, the Hall of Fame waived the normal 3-year waiting period to allow Lemieux to enter, only for him to unretire and play again a few years later. He was only one of 3 players to ever accomplish this feat, with Gordie Howe and Guy Lafleur being the others. Another record that may never be matched that he set was being the only player in NHL history to score a goal in all 5 possible scenarios of play in the same game. This means that he scored a goal on the power play, shorthanded, empty net, penalty shot, and an even strength goal in the same game. We could continue to pour out his accolades and statistics, but we'll just suffice to say that his accolades more than speak for themselves. But wait, we're missing out on a huge portion of Lemieux's legacy. Though he was an outstanding player, he was also given an opportunity that no other player had to change the course of their franchise. In 1997 and 98, despite the on-ice success the Penguins had experienced in winning championships, the organization was continuing to be plagued by financial issues. The organization, through a combination of bad contracts, mismanaged trades, and spending more than they were making, were forced to declare bankruptcy and were given one of 2 avenues to recovery: selling the team and relocating to another city, or folding the team altogether. During this time, Lemieux, newly retired due to his ailing conditions, held a considerable amount of leverage over the team due to the fact that he was their greatest creditor to date. Over the previous decade, the Penguins had deferred much of Lemieux's salary in order to keep the organization afloat, and as a result, owed him over $30 million. Using this leverage, Lemieux offered to use that money as a way to purchase a large stake in the organization, and after court proceedings, was given the title of CEO, owner, and chair of the organization. Unlike his predecessors, Lemieux vowed that the organization would pay back every penny that they owed to their creditors, which was extremely rare for a company in bankruptcy. Due to his popularity and appeal in the city, the team was able to move from a 7- and 8-figure loss to a small profit the very next year. Though the climb was slow and against all odds, the team was able to fulfill Lemieux's goals of paying off all of their debt by the time of his second retirement in 2006-2007. Under Lemieux's ownership group, the Penguins, similar to Lemieux's playing career, experienced a great deal of ups and downs. For the last few years of Lemieux's career, the team again rescinded back to being a bottom-tier team in the league. However, their fortunes changed when they were gifted with the first pick in the 2005 NHL draft, when they were able to acquire Sidney Crosby, a gifted young hockey player who would also go down as one of the greatest Pittsburgh Penguins players in history in his own right. With the acquisition of Crosby and the Russian superstar Evgeny Malkin the following year, the Penguins would again start a string of playoff appearances that would culminate in the organization winning another 3 championships in the next decade. In 2008, the Penguins would make it to the Stanley Cup Finals to play against the Detroit Red Wings, and although they lost that series in a close battle, they would have their revenge against the same team the following year, earning them their first championship since 1991-92. By winning this title, Lemieux became the first person in NHL history to win the Stanley Cup both as a player and as an owner of a team. The success would continue in 2016 and 17, when the Penguins defeated the San Jose Sharks and the Nashville Predators respectively to win another set of back-to-back championships, solidifying Lemieux's legacy as one of the greatest players and owners in the league's history. One little-known fact about Lemieux is that he would often open up his home to the players who were recently drafted until they could become acclimated to their new city. One of the most famous examples of this was opening up his home to none other than Sidney Crosby. You would normally think that when you are given the opportunity to stay at another individual's home, you would want to leave as soon as possible to have your own space. But Sidney Crosby actually ended up staying for 4 years with the Lemieux family. Lemieux went on to say that after all that time together, he viewed Crosby more as a son than a player on the team that he was the owner of. He also performed this service to other stars like Marc-Andre Fleury and even Jaromir Jagr. Since Jagr moved to the USA from his home country of Czechoslovakia, Lemieux actually opened up his home to him back in 1990 until his new teammate could become acclimated to the city. This heart of gold feature of Lemieux's is part of the reason why he gained so much respect throughout his career by fans and players alike. We began this podcast by stating the fact that, as is the case in all of professional sports, the debate continues as to who the greatest of all time is constantly. In the NBA, you don't have to look far to hear a TV personality or a sports article debating about whether Michael Jordan or LeBron James is the best, or if Tom Brady is eclipsing the likes of Joe Montana or another great quarterback in NFL history. Likewise, there's been a long-standing debate about whether Mario Lemieux could be the greatest hockey player of all time if he didn't experience the injuries and trials that he experienced. Lemieux ended up missing 473 games due to injury throughout his career, and he still ended up posting the 8th highest point total in NHL history to date. He posted a 1.88 points per game ratio throughout his career, which was only second to Wayne Gretzky at 1.92. So again, it's up for debate whether that would actually be higher if he didn't play through injuries. However, regardless of any debate, it's apparent that Super Mario Lemieux was able to transcend the game using his hockey skills and business acumen. The Pittsburgh Penguins today are worth about $650 million, which would never have been the case had he not been drafted there. Today, Lemieux is a dedicated philanthropist using his estimated $150 million net worth to help build the Mario Lemieux Foundation, which seeks to raise funds for cancer research, and the Athletes for Hope organization, which seeks to help professional athletes get involved in charities and volunteer in their communities. The Mario Lemieux Foundation has provided over $15 million to date towards cancer research and provides other great programs such as the Austin's Playroom. This initiative was born out of a personal situation that Mario and his wife Nathalie experienced. Their son, Austin, who was born prematurely, ended up spending 71 days in the NICU after being born. As a result, their other two children, both toddlers at the time, had to spend a lot of time at the hospital with their parents and had nothing to distract them from the stressful environment of being in a hospital during that time. The initiative seeks to provide rooms to hospitals that tries to alleviate some of that stress from children, whether as patients or visitors, by providing a colorful atmosphere, toys, and other things that are meant to distract them from being in that environment. The Lemieux have always made it a priority to do everything that they can to support these and many other great charities, and should be highly commended for their work. The game of hockey may be completely different than the era that these well-known players like Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky played in, but one thing is apparent. Had these men not gone out and dominated the sport like they did, the sport would never be where it is today. In Lemieux's case, to be able to perform to the high standard that he did, while also dealing with nagging injuries, sometimes so severe that you couldn't even function properly, is a testament to the grit and inner strength that can separate the elite players from those that aren't. And whether you like the Pittsburgh Penguins or not, we can all agree that what he did both on and off the ice was worthy of a legend. Thank you for listening to the Walking with Legends podcast. We appreciate your support and hope that you'll tune in next week as we examine the life of NFL great Peyton Manning. If you enjoy the podcast and would like to help it grow, we encourage you to take some time to leave a review, subscribe, or rate the podcast in iTunes. It's because of listener support like you that we are able to continue, and we appreciate anything that you can do to help. Until next time, have a legendary week.